Barak Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is basically more info. Proselytes, Esther 8 and 17. This is pretty much based off of a video I did earlier. There was an actual comment on the comment board that a brother put on there, and there was a particular version of the or another translation of the same uh, chapter and verse that I wanted to briefly speak on, because it's like more info is coming out. So here he put Esther 8:17 from the NET, which we're gonna read that. But first we'll just read it in the regular King James, Esther 8:17, and in every province and in every city whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day, and many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. So they didn't become Jews because they were convinced out of the law, that they were, that they were Israelites, or should I say that they could join the religion or whatever the case may be. They joined because they were in fear for their life because of the decree. If you want to know a little bit more about it, go to this video I did earlier and watch that. It'll give you the history on it. Now, when we go to the NET, right, that he posted, it says, throughout every province and throughout every city where the king's edict and his law arrived, the Jews experienced happiness and joy, banquets and holidays. Many of the resident peoples pretended to be Jews because the fear of the Jews had overcome them. All right, so it said that they pretended to be Jews. And when you look up the word for what is it? Let me see. Many of the people of the land became Jews. The word there is Yahad. Yahad, right? Now, Yahad, we come down here, it says, to become a Jew in fact or in fraud, become Judaized. All right. So this version of the NET pretty much stated that they pretended to be Jews because the fear of the Jews fell upon them. When we read earlier in the NLT, we just go straight to the point in the middle of it. And many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared what the Jews might do to them. Because when you read the letter that was the law that Xerxes wrote and signed, it stated that the Israelites could take vengeance on any nation that would, do them any harm. Okay, so all nations saw what happened to Haman and his sons, and they were so afraid that they became, Jews. They say, okay, we're Jews too. So in the NET, it says that they did that in pretense. They pretended, as you see here, many of the resident peoples pretended to be Jews because the fear of the Jews had overcome them. All right. So I just wanted to, just make mention of that. So no matter which way you slice it, they were in fear for their life. So therefore, they just became, they called themselves Jews because they were in fear for their life. So they really pretended to be Jews. They weren't persuaded, like, when you read in the book of Titus, right? Let's go there real quick and then close out. Titus chapter 1, verse 9. It says, holding fast the faithful word as he hath been taught, that he may be able by sound doctrine both to exhort and to what? Convince the gainsayers. So they weren't being convinced because they were, they were being taught. They weren't convinced because, the Israelites were there teaching them, and somehow they said something that convinced them. It's, oh wow, that's so profound. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to join y'all. I'm going to become a Jew. No, they pretended to be Israelites because they were scared because of the decree that the king put. And Israel, when you read into the 9th chapter, I believe it is, they was putting certain individuals to death. It wasn't just Haman and his sons. It was I think like 500 or so other individuals that actually got put to death. So it wasn't a thing of they you had the Israelites back then teaching, and somehow something they said convinced them. No. So they did it because of fear. So they were pretty much being fake, phonies about it. So the word convince, elenco, right? It says to convict, refute, confute. Another one is let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. By what? By you speaking and teaching them. That wasn't the case with those nations. Those nations, they pretty much called themselves Jews because they were afraid. So they pretended they were being frauds. They were being phonies, because they had fear because of what the Israelites were doing to those that that would do harm to our nation. To convict, refute, confute, generally with a suggestion of shame of a person convinced, by conviction to bring to the light, see, to expose. So by sound doctrine, convince the gainsayer. And that wasn't the case with those individuals. They pretty much um, pretended to be Jews because they were afraid of what was, the decree that was set out. So the word there is antilego. Antilego is to speak against, gainsay, contradict. Right. So here it is, you saying one thing, and then they were, well, what about this and what about that? Like these so-called wacky tacky Christians, they weren't convinced in that manner. They faked being a Jew because they were afraid, for their life. It says to oppose oneself to one, decline to obey him, declare oneself against him, refuse to have anything to do with him, right? And then you would convince them. This is talking about Israelites that were speaking against the word. You use the word to convince them, but after the first, second admonition, if they can't get it, forget it. That wasn't the case with these nations that were coming up, and calling themselves Jews at the time of, Esther and Mordecai during the time of Purim. All right. They were in fear for their lives. And you could read the whole chapter, and it gives you blow by blow what was to be done to these people that was harassing and threatening the nation of Israel back then. So I just wanted to make a quick mention of that. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say Shalom.